Bigger than capes.
Give me some of the sadness.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it, and then I watched it.
Right.
Hello, welcome to Bigger Than Capes. I'm Zach, and this week I'm joined by Will. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, buddy. How are you up to?
That's
What
a new
is
one.
wrong with my brain? It's not like this is the first words I've spoken to you. We've
No.
chatted beforehand, and yet I went in two-footed, and it was utter nonsense.
I like the idea, though, that we only speak within the confines of the podcast.
Yeah, absolute silence when the button's turned off. I just walk away,
I mean,
say nothing.
we can do that if you want. It's only interacting in these conversations. In answer to your question, I am pretty okay. Yeah.
Good.
Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad at all, mate. I think as we were literally just saying to each other, maybe I say this every time as well, but I'm making a good dent into my backlog by not spending any money on anything other than, I guess, just fuel, diesel and electricity and gas.
Fun. All the stuff we enjoy spending money on.
All the really cool stuff.
But
It has opened up a world of backlog. I bought these things for a reason, sometimes upwards of like 7 or 8 years ago, and now I'm ready.
I've reached a great system where the oldest stuff I have tends to be like random DC and Marvel. Mm-hmm. So occasionally I will read a full run of something I've bought and not touched for 5 years. But I'm doing like one run of something a year. So ultimately, I'm never catching up. I read all of Rebels a few months ago, which I bought in, I believe, 2011.
Okay, yeah.
So ultimately, I'm now making a good dent on that because I finished 2011, at least on one comic. But yeah, the backlog is forever, I think, is the system I believe in. There's just so many comics that I have purchased.
There's definitely a hierarchy. There are some things that I bought and then probably had a bit of buyer's remorse afterwards and thought, I'm not sure why I picked that up. But most of the Kickstarters that I backed have turned up. I have backed
A lot recently, yeah.
Yeah, I have backed a handful more, so I'm expecting more, but I've got plenty of reading to do there. So, yeah, working my way through it and trying not to ignore stuff anymore.
I mean, it's hard. I think that it's the curse of anyone who's into comics or just books in general. You end up with an unbelievable amount very quickly, and you always want more. So
yeah, because it's a medium I really love. Like, I want to support everybody. Like, everybody who's making comics. Well, not everybody, and I think you know who you are. I think if you've listened to our show, you understand we're quite on a liberal scale of things, and there's another scale of that. But the point being, I want most people to succeed at comics. So I'm happy to give them my money, but yeah, a lot of the time it does mean stuff sort of stays in the cellophane. And like a supermarket with yellow stickers, I'm a sucker for a sale. So you put me a sale on, give me a full run of something, that could be upwards of like 10 volumes, and I'll probably just buy all of it at once.
Yeah, and I have a similar issue, I think.
It is just
weak.
Compulsion.
I don't know. I've got a lot of books that I need to read, and I am slowly getting there. Much the same as you. I think the thing at the moment is the incredibly indie stuff I've got is the stuff that I'm like trying to power through because there's so much that I have digitally that I can read anywhere, that the stuff that I have at home physically that only exists in that one physical form is the stuff that I'm like, I want to read all of this so that then I've got all the digital stuff that's not like tied to a place in the universe that I have to be.
Yeah, you got to make opportunity for those.
I still don't have enough time, but maybe one day I will.
In Megatropolis, the kind of alt world dread story turned up in hardback the other day, and that's
nice.
That's very lovely. I've got that in digital as well. And in the original Judge Dredd Megs that it came in, but it's real purdy.
That was one of your top picks for last year, right?
Yeah, Yeah.
I remember things. I know things.
I think we should maybe do that on the podcast. I think
Let's
it's got a lot going for it.
Yeah, you know, we've not really touched much 2000 AD.
No, I've got loads.
Have we touched any 2000 AD?
I've got loads. Apart from the fact, like, I keep bringing it up for, I think when we...
You keep mentioning it any opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. Although, disappointingly in the intro, it's Matt saying,
Oh, Dread.
Oh, Dread.
We can recut that if you want. If you want to do your Dread right now. And
Oh, Dread. I mean, I echo the sentiment anyway.
put you in as a kind of backing vocal on that if you want.
Dread, 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 Dread.
So this week, not Dread.
Not Dread.
This week, A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance.
Mm-hmm.
An incredibly long title. As a name, it kind of immediately makes me think of like, you know, like all the kind of pop punk emo bands from the mid-2000s with the really long song titles. Our lawyer made us change the name of this song so we wouldn't get sued. That kind of... That's a Righteous Thirst for Vengeance puts me immediately in that kind of, all right, we're using the long titles today. Sweet.
Well, definitely. I was listening to another podcast, which I shan't name for just competition, really.
I mean, you can mention other people. We don't exist in a vacuum.
That's true. It was from Off Panel, and it was an interview with Matthew Rosenberg, and he talked about the fact that like most of his indie books have stupidly long names.
For Kids Walking to a Bank.
Yeah. What's the furthest place from here? Etc. And
Only two I can think of, but I know there's more.
that's two examples. That's good enough. But he was saying when he worked in a comic shop...
We can never go home.
No, nice. Thank you. Good work. When he worked in a comic shop, people would get confused with single word titles. But even if they get it wrong and say, like, you know, where's the furthest place from now or whatever, at least in a comic shop, you'll go, I know what you mean. I know what you're after.
I know, like, there's multiple books called things like Echo, which is like...
It becomes difficult, you know, like, which Echo do you want? Or, like, I think the example he used was Trees, and I think the book they were looking for was, like, The Woods.
Very different from Trees.
Yeah, but you can see where the title gets muddled.
One of my personal favourite title misunderstandings was when I worked in a comic book shop. Well, I still do, but you know, another one I worked in. The amount of people asking for the Frankenstein Sherlock Holmes crossover, which doesn't exist.
No, but Sherlock Frankenstein.
Yeah, and having to explain to people who's like, no, I get all the Sherlock Holmes kind of comics. It's like, yes, but that's not what this is. Trying to explain, like, I now that you've pitched it, I want Sherlock Holmes meets Frankenstein's monster or meets Dr. Frankenstein. I'm easy. But it's not real. Hey, this is Jeff Lemire doing some stuff. But that's always stuck with me as the determination. It's like, no, Sherlock Frankenstein. It's like, yes, real name of comic. Not the book you have
It's not what you're thinking.
created. But I like the idea of hearing a title and conceiving what that book must be.
Yeah.
Only to find out, no, you've created something completely independent.
It's real different.
But, you know, if Sherlock Holmes does meet Doctor or Frankenstein's monster, I'll take it.
I think you have like a double date and then Watson has to go on an adventure, say, with Dr. Frankenstein.
I could read that.
And Sherlock with the monster. And maybe there's some sort of race to solve a crime. It's all, you know,
The two odd couple relationships.
It's unfolding in my mind. It's sort of, what was the Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder one about the train? It's got like Blue Streak.
There was a second there where I was going to say Superman 3, but I think...
I'm not sure Gene Wilder's in that. Gene Hackman is.
Yeah, different Gene, but...
Anyway, I'm going down a rabbit hole, but...
Well, we're already down that rabbit hole.
Copyright that idea. We'll write that one up.
So, back on topic.
My original point was A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance is, in and of itself, like, relatively difficult to remember, but... it sticks in your mind that it's a very bulky title, and I think as long as you get 2 or 3 of the words right, most people know what you're after.
Yeah, as long as you're like in the area, I think people will be like, "Oh, right."
That's quite
Doing a slight talking like Scooby Doo thing. There.
yeah. That's quite normal in a comic shop.
But no, I agree. I think if you've got, Righteous and Vengeance, you probably cracked this. Yeah. You want to take the intro for this, or do you want me to intro for this? Or?
I'm happy to take the intro. I mean, it's kind of a difficult book to explain.
To intro.
Written by Rick Remender, art by André Lima Araújo.
Araújo is the way I would go.
I'm going with it. Colours by Chris O'Halloran, letters by Rus Wooton. Angela will be pleased. I think she likes Rus Wooton, doesn't she? It's wonderful.
She does.
Yeah. Designed by Erica Schnatz and production assistant Gabe Dinger. Dinger?
I feel like it's Dinger, but Dinger doesn't feel right.
We may never know. But A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance certainly appears to be the tale of one man's crusade to interrupt or derail a sort of a deep web assassination network. It's a very mysterious book that stretches its questions over quite a long period of time. Or, that's not quite fair. I think the entire book takes place over about 2 days.
Quite possibly.
Maybe a little bit more, but it's a slow pace of book.
But a fast pace of time?
But a fast pace of time.
I don't know what that means, but...
So it's hard to say exactly what the next sort of steps are, although this book, I guess, takes up the point where our main character, Mr. Wen, saves Neva Romero and her son Xavier from being assassinated. And then they go on the run, but he has now been implicated in a handful of murders.
Yes.
So he's on the run from the police, who also seem to be corrupt, and there is this clearly very wealthy, evil dude in French Polynesia who appears to be pulling the strings, although there's some suggestion that's perhaps another level above him. There's a lot of questions, a lot of characters who are introduced and clearly have a lot to do with the plot, but as of yet, it's not entirely clear what that is.
Yeah, it's an enigmatic first 5 issues.
It is that. That's a good way of saying it.
You haven't read it yet, but issue 6 does give us some information, or potentially some information, about Mr. Wen more than anything else. But yeah, there's a lot of questions, and it is kind of a real slow burn on the information you do get. I know when you were writing about this for the website, you talked about how there's not a lot of dialogue, and it's quite a fast read, and stuff does happen, but not a lot that you can really talk about, which is why I kind of thought we'd have more to say with a full trade.
Yeah. And I think it's a book that reads much better in one go.
Yeah, if this was coming out in like graphic novel form, I think it would probably just save a lot of time. I think the singles are good and they look great. The art is really good throughout. But I think the actual story being told kind of exists better when you've got a lot of it. I think we both tackled it in singles to begin with, and then... Yeah,
I think I got about 3 in and then thought, like, I feel like I'm sort of writing the same thing every week. But... I like the pace of it. Actually, I like the focus on quite small details. It will spend several panels showing you like one action, one movement.
Yeah,
and we'll sort of break that down over. And that's why it's a quick read, but over such a short period of time. Like, because it spends an entire page will be spent on a conversation sat in a car, which a monthly book would probably spend 2 panels on. Jamming a load of text in.
But something with its own pacing and freedom can take a full page.
Yeah. But as you said, it doesn't have very much dialogue. And sometimes that lasts for quite long periods and all the storytelling is being done in the art. And then suddenly that kind of focus and that detail becomes important, and it gives it a reason to look at a page longer than, I must admit, for the most part, a lot of like action-based comics, you kind of get everything you need at a glance. and you get the rest of the context from the text. But in this, you need to take so much of the story from the art and the individual moments that it's worth spending a little bit of extra time in clocking all the detail in there.
Yeah, I agree. I think in a way, because of that, it's kind of reminiscent of like old Western films where you'll spend like 15 minutes just with a guy sat waiting for a train and nothing really happens, but it just spends time building tension through how little happens.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same. I think, okay, more happens than just a guy waiting for a train for 15 minutes. But I still think it does that kind of slow tension building kind of vibe. Like in the first issue, we see a load of small details that kind of tell a bigger story about Mr. Wen, where they're things like people keep telling him he should have an umbrella. He doesn't. He tries to buy cigarettes, which ultimately the interaction in the store kind of sets up the later part of the issue. And we then see the kid who's got the pigeon that's injured on the side of the road. And he can't, the kid knows he should kill the pigeon because it's going to die anyway. And that kind of setup all tells you a lot about Mr. Wen without really telling you anything, like immediately telling you anything. It just shows you who he is.
I think for me, what I got out of that was it shows Mr. Wen apparently has this sense of sort of social responsibility.
Yeah.
He visits his mother, who would appear to have like some sort of Alzheimer's or dementia and lives in a care home. But just before he goes to try and save Neva, he just drops a pile of money at the front desk and, look after her. Even when, as you say, it's raining and he doesn't have an umbrella, there's an old couple running for the bus and he sort of holds the bus for them and lets them get on first. And yeah, with the pigeon, an analogy that I understood as a cat owner, and sometimes you get these like half-dead raggedy things and you know the right thing to do, but it's a tough choice to make.
Yeah.
But ultimately he does, and again, like ends up back in the rain. He's always sort of suffering for his sense of responsibility. And I think that stretches then to what he's doing. And I mean, we don't find out at this point why he's doing what he's doing. And you said the next issue you get a bit more about Mr. Wen, so I guess it comes out then. But this, like, he's putting his life on the line to attempt to stop, or at least warn people that they're the victims of going to be the victims of assassination. You need a pretty good reason to decide to throw yourself into that world. But again, he just seems responsible. He seems like he feels like he owes something, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It definitely feels like there's a sense of responsibility to all of his actions, often to his own disadvantage. He goes out of his way constantly to do the right thing, or what he believes is the right thing.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I don't think we get a lot of characters that kind of fit that mold in comics.
He seems like quite, I don't know, well-rounded, just really normal. In a way that comic characters tend to be exaggerations of particular character traits, and in a lot of things are, I'm not saying this is a negative, but are relatively sort of two-dimensional. They fit a particular role that's needed in the story, and that's why they exist. But I think a good example of it is when he bumps into a guy in the petrol station while he is buying cigarettes. At first, like, absolutely lays into him about getting into his way and looking where he's going, and then immediately like pulls himself up and says, like, oh, that's actually a shitty thing to say, and helps him put his groceries in. Now, as we know, that sets up to something much more sinister, but at the time I think it shows a bit of a breadth of his personality. Like, he is liable to be angry and snap, and obviously we know that he's like under quite a stressful scenario where he's going and what he's planning to do.
Yeah, it's interesting because for much of the first issue, we're kind of left without any knowledge of what he is doing or what his plan is or where he is going. It's kind of interesting to get 20 pages, 20 something pages into a book before we really know what what the deal is. I mean, even now, 5-6 issues in, we don't really know what the deal is. So
absolutely not. Like, it spins its story over such a long period of time that it lets the sort of action and stuff play out. So there's quite a lot of context clues. Loads of it, again, is in the art. Like when he goes to accept a new job on this, what's it called? I want to say like the dark web, but that sounds like it's too.
Is it
sci-fi jargon?
That is what it is, but I think it's called Wet Bear.
Oh, that's right, Wet Bear.
It is Wet Bear, yeah.
And he goes to sort of take a new job, which ends up being Neva's job. And the only context you get from that, the fact that he isn't just an assassin, is like he's sweating and pondering over the accept button. There's no inner monologue saying like, I need to take this job so I can go and warn Neva before she's assassinated, as a lot of comics would do. It just lets you look at it. And for the most part, I felt like I knew what was going on. Yeah. And I also think the bits that it has withheld, it's done so on purpose. It's not a failing of the storytelling at this point. Like in fact, there's a bit where there's a phone call between the very rich dude in French Polynesia and the police officer Curo.
Yes.
And it's written in such a way that you only get the unuseful parts of the conversation. Do you know what I mean? Like, it never tells you what they're actually talking about, because you only get the sort of, yeah, good idea. And then it's back to the other person.
Which is good, and it maintains the ongoing mystery of not really knowing what's happening. Which is impressive. I think it's impressive to maintain kind of such a strong kind of intrigue building narrative whilst giving so little information.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I guess in that sense, it's kind of reminiscent of things like Lost, which kind of spent season after season asking questions only to not necessarily answer anything. Mm-hmm. So I guess that we do see that kind of long format approach to give you a load of questions and no answers. And that does work here. Kind of curious where this is going to go.
Definitely.
And it's interesting because I kind of associate Rick Remender's comics with being quite densely packed with stuff. Mm-hmm. Things like Black Science.
Yeah.
There's like no room to breathe or move because there's so much stuff.
Yeah.
And I can't even think of anything else right now, but Deadly Class, incredibly like every space is filled with something.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to see him tell a story so different, where the books, like the story is just allowed to breathe and have like hardly any named characters. Some of we've got like 3, 4, 5 5 named characters, and then we've got like Cindy, the like CSI forensics person, who is in one panel but gets a name. And then we've got Mayor Oak, who, do we know who Mayor Oak is? Is Mayor Oak the guy in French Polynesia? Is Mayor Oak just, I don't know.
Yeah, don't know. But
it's just a name we see on the kind of dark web assassination job board.
Definitely a pseudonym, yeah.
The same with Blue Jackal. Obviously, we see Blue Jackal appear in a few issues, but we don't really know who he is other than a well-respected assassin.
Yeah.
We also have another assassin in issues 2 and 3 who we just don't get a name for. So, but we also see, because of that this other guy assumes Mr. Wen is the Blue Jackal, because names are kind of left so nobody knows who anyone is in the assassin game, which I guess makes sense if you're gonna be a hired killer. I guess being anonymous is like important.
Yeah. I think you said it already, but they've managed to craft an intriguing world by just asking a load of like obtuse questions. They've plunged you into this scenario that begs like explanation as to. I mean, we don't even know why Neva is a target for assassination. There doesn't seem to be any real clue as to what she's done or has perceived to have done. We don't know why Mr. Wen's involved, any of it. But the moment to moment is quite thrilling. Like the fight to stop Neva's assassination, I think is really good. It's like quite protracted. And again, it's not like a superhero fight when there's loads of punches being landed. Mr. Wen is clearly not a trained fighter.
Yeah.
And sort of, struggles his way to victory. I think the colouring is really excellent and does a lot of the heavy lifting in the storytelling.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think all the colouring kind of suits the locations, but also does a lot to like establish the different locations. The colour schemes between like Neva's apartment and the mansion in French Polynesia is so different that it does make a big difference in the visual you get.
And people kind of get character colours as well. So I mean, I'm gonna assume he is Mayor Oak for now in French Polynesia. All of his panels are kind of purpley pink lilacs.
Yeah.
Almost all of Kuro's are a kind of olive green. Mr. Wen's are almost always bluish. Mm-hmm. Any action is kind of yellow or orange, or like moment of surprise or punctuation. Anything that's kind of disgusting or scary tends to be red, I think. Like, it's not like I've absolutely clocked these out, but
no, but there's some.
I think there's a kind of a pattern to it.
There's a logic here,
and I think it reads subconsciously into your head eventually. That when you see that kind of yellow-orange background, it immediately says sort of action. Like it is a punctuation point. It's almost like grammar in colour.
Grammar in colour.
It's a good album title.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I'll take that down for next time.
Copyright.
No, I agree. I think there is a strong colour association. I did want to ask about a favourite feature of all books we talk about with you, which is onomatopoeia and sound effects. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe there's not a lot of them, but I feel like it's noticeable because we have so little dialogue at times, yes, and we're kind of given a lot of scenery, that when we get kind of the click of a door being unlocked or the glug of when drinking milk or stuff like that, that there are a lot of sound effects throughout.
Yes, definitely. And for the most part, I think they're really, really well done. Like when Neva in an apartment listening to music, and the musical notes kind of work the way around the back of her head, but in front of her wrist. So it gives that impression of like flowing everywhere. And similarly, when Mr. Wen gets to the first house that kind of concludes the first issue,
yes,
there is a squealing kettle,
which kind of bleeds throughout all the following.
And yeah, and the way it works its way around the corner, so it sort of suggests where the sound's coming from. And then when he takes it off, and the constant ringing of E's then just sort of shrinks into tiny ones. Yeah, I think it's great. I love that sort of that's world building for me, and that makes it feel so much more. I was going to say inclusive, but that's not really what I mean. Immersive. That's exactly what I mean. Thank you.
No, I agree. I think it would feel quite static if it was just a lot of images without dialogue. So I think having the implication of sound helps to flesh out the world rather than just being the images. There's a weird disconnect between having the images and then having the images with sound effects. Mm-hmm. It kind of...
There's a couple that have that kind of manga thing of not really being a sound but being a movement.
Yeah, the kind of little movement lines and
There's a bit where somebody's got a coin in their fingers and it says flip.
yeah.
Or when he's dusting his prints off and it says like swipe. Like that's not onomatopoeia, but
But it's similar.
just trigger something in your imagination that says you can think of a sound that this is making.
Yeah, that's true. I think it is really well constructed though. And yeah, I think Rus Wooton's kind of sound effects and lettering throughout are pretty solid, really. Obviously, it's a challenge as a letterer if there's not many words to write.
Yeah, you do what you can with what you're given.
Something to be said there, but there's a good balance of kind of regular speech throughout and then words with more force behind them. We have a bit of Neva shouting. Well, we have a few panels of Neva shouting and things like that are more focused on I don't know, it is good lettering. It is
Yeah, as you say,
minimal,
not ever present, but
well done when it is there, which
I think the dialogue was pretty good as well. Like everybody reads very believably.
yeah, I think that's true. I think I don't know, it's strange. I'm not always, I think I mentioned on previous podcasts, I'm not always a huge Rick Remender fan, and I think the characters here feel very realised without having too much dialogue. So I think the balance is good. I think sometimes in other Rick Remender books, we're kind of presented with a character and basically that's it. It's kind of, here's your character, I'm going to go. I think here there's a good effort to establish every character before getting to know them, and or we get to know them before they're dependent on dialogue. I think maybe that's a shift in format, because I think of things like Tokyo Ghost, which I know a lot of people were really into, but I just couldn't get into, but that was kind of capped at 12 issues or 10 issues, I can't remember. So maybe it's that there's more freedom here with the format, which then allows the characters to be more fully established rather than just given to you.
I can see that. I wonder if like it's just maybe just a bit of an evolution for Remender, wanting to try something a bit different.
It has also been, I guess, about 10 years since Tokyo Ghost, so...
Yeah. I mean, just for a bit of balance, I'm a pretty big fan of Rick Remender and normally read most of what he does, at least on his kind of creator-owned scene. I read a Captain America of his I didn't think that much of, but that's by the by.
Fairly sure I've read the same Captain America run.
Yeah. But I
feel like I've read some Venom as well that he did.
Feel like he's, for me anyway, he's somebody who sort of saves his best ideas for himself, I think, which is utterly fair.
I think that's more true of the current kind of generation of writers. We see people doing their best work on creator-owned independent stuff rather than...
I mean, it's
giving everything to Marvel or DC.
Just the other day in the news, who was it? It was saying, was it Joe Casey? Had like turned down Marvel's offer for the use of, I don't want to say Morbius, but did he create Morbius?
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm getting lost in my own sort of thought, but the point being that I think people know by and large now that they're not going to be financially rewarded if any of these characters take off. It was America Chavez. That's
okay.
That's what it was. Joe Casey and America Chavez. Okay. You're not going to reap the benefits of that either in actual financial gain or just kind of recognition. It's not going to bring people to come and read your other works necessarily.
There is a truth to that, I think.
But once you know that, particularly as a new like upcoming writer, then it sort of feels like, well, why would I give you something new? You know,
why would I give you the best thing I have?
I might as well just rehash.
I'm never going to get
something.
told, hey, congrats on that best thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I see the point, definitely.
No, I think it's true of a lot of writers, and obviously Rick Remender isn't the newest of writers.
No, he's been around.
We're like 20 years into Rick Remender books.
Yeah,
but I think stuff like with more current creators, or newer creators, even like kind of Rom V and Dan Waters, Donny Cates, kind of people who are way newer to comics. I think we see them doing their most interesting work away from Marvel and DC. And I mean, there's a reason we focus on indie books, I guess.
Yeah, I must admit, I've not read a lot of what they've done. I've not read any Swamp Thing.
Which, don't get me wrong, has been good, but on the other hand, Graffiti's Wall.
That's it, and that's not from a conscious decision not to read Swamp Thing. I would like to read it, I just haven't sort of got round to it. But yeah, I think The Many Deaths of Layla Starr, I say Graffiti's Wall, even like back to his sort of early big hit. I don't know if it's a big hit, but These Savage Shores.
It was a big hit. I think.
I thought it was very good. So yeah, I think I've got nothing against it.
We have tangented so hard.
I know.
We always do. Meant to be here.
Yeah. Let's get back on course. Screw you, tangent. What were we talking about? Colours. They were really good.
Letters. They were really good.
Letters really good. Just the art in general. I think this just feel like something I mention a lot as well, but it clearly means a lot to me. Everybody has a different face.
Yeah, no, we mention it a lot, but it is valid.
The breadth of design work, even on just like henchmen, you get a picture of 3 henchmen, and you then see them in a different panel, like in profile, and it's still clear which is which. And it's surprising how often that isn't the case in comic books.
Weirdly so, yeah. I think that attention to kind of back up characters and giving them, their own face.
Just a little bit of distinctiveness. But I think the main design of the kind of lead characters are really good. I'm getting perhaps a desire to have Benedict Wong play Mr. Wen in a film.
I can kind of see that. Yeah, I think there's definitely a little bit of that.
It's not always, but there are some kind of particular panels where I think, you might as well just trace Benedict Wong's face.
It's not just so much the face as kind of a similar body shape and everything.
Sure, like a mannerism to him as well. That I think we would be really good in it if they were ever to adapt it.
If anyone wants our opinion on who the casting should be,
I'll take a producing credit.
I think. We've already touched on the kind of Western influence in the kind of narrative, and I do think there is a cinematic feel to this, and you can kind of see how this would be adapted to be a show or a film.
For sure.
Which I guess is something that we're seeing more and more creators pay attention to in comics these days, because it's constantly happening now.
Yeah.
So, no.
I don't know. I don't want to be so gatekeepery that. For the most part, I think most adaptations, I would still say go and read the comic. I think the comic is still probably better than the majority of TV adaptations. Some of them I think are good evolutions. I think Umbrella Academy, certainly in terms of the core family and the cast, I think is much improved from the book.
Yeah, there's a lot. I think Umbrella Academy is an example where it's been much more streamlined, and the comic can feel very, very much like Gerard Way kind of enthusiastically trying to write a Grant Morrison book, which it is, and so much so that then Gerard Way went on to write Doom Patrol when.
Yeah, did it again.
But I think the show kind of rounds off some of those awkward edges that the comic has. And don't get me wrong, I love Umbrella Academy. It's one of the comics that kind of got me into regularly reading comics, and got particularly indie comics. I think I was incidentally already into Grant Morrison's Batman at the time. But Umbrella Academy was one of the things that got me into the kind of Dark Horse, weirder world. So... Again, tangents hard, but no, I agree. I think there's still merit to checking out Umbrella Academy, even if the show exists, and I think that exists for a lot of comics. I think there are shows that improve, shows and films that improve on the original stuff, but the original stuff is good enough to be adapted in the first place. So.
But when the Boys TV series came out and was popular, I remember like Dynamite released all the old like Omnibuy
Omnibuy, yeah, that's the word.
again, and they like shot to the top of sales charts for only for a little while.
Oh yeah, for a solid week, but
That's kind of what I want the shows to do, is to drive people back to the source material,
of the good stuff.
and then hopefully once you read that and you recognise some of the names of the people involved or whatever, then you go on and you just sort of keep going. But comics do such a terrible job of advertising themselves that.
Yeah, at times that's definitely true. But no, I think there was an original point here somewhere.
It was kind of about adapting this, I suppose, isn't it?
I do think it has that cinematic kind of vibe to it, and like the consideration has been made of what this would be like in another format. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of, it's gruesome, and it's I don't even know what just very there's some gory stuff in here, and like Neva smashes the guy, one of the assassin in the face with a pan of boiling water, and just takes his face clean off with it, really. And that's not even particularly the most gruesome bit in there. So it's, I don't know, it's interesting because we spend a lot of pages kind of tension building, and then that tension is kind of released in throwing a pan of boiling water at a guy, or
because it's set and drawn quite realistically, that those small actions feel massive. Like Neva's life is genuinely on the line. It's not like a superhero punching a villain through a wall. Like at some point, they don't feel as spectacular as they should do based on what's actually happening, because your expectations shift.
Yeah, like Wen's fight with the other assassin is the kind of clumsy, awkward fight.
Exactly. He almost kind of survives by luck and just kind of determination against somebody much better trained and much more willing to kill than he is. And it makes those small moments, I think, just much, much more impactful. Like you say, the pan of boiling water is Neva just absolutely desperate to try and save her own life.
And, fair.
And you feel it, yeah.
But I do like... I think some of my favourite panels in here are the interaction between Wen and the other assassin, when he's like, throws him the camera and Wen drops the camera. And he's like,
well, that's it.
Fine, I'll do everything. You go bring the car around. God, never meet your heroes.
That's it. He thinks he's this top grade assassin, doesn't he? But Mr. Wen's clearly just a schlub.
Which is kind of great. It's kind of great that there's so little knowledge of who the other assassins are, that the assumption is just, well, you're here, you must be here to kill this woman with me.
That's it, yeah.
Why would you not be? I don't know, there's a clumsiness to that kind of lack of organization amongst hitmen that's like kind of lovably dumb. Like just not knowing anything, but just the assumption of, well, you must be, so
yeah,
let's get to murdering.
Let's get to it.
Really odd dynamics between the characters, but I think that kind of, when we haven't really seen Mr. Wen interact with that many people, I think it's interesting to see how he's gotten into this world, and then for it to be kind of effortlessly gotten into this world, because apparently just nobody knows who anyone is. So just walk in, wear a suit, look the part.
Well, that's it. I guess my suspicion is that probably Mr. Wen has been a target at some point and has somehow got out of it, and then
here we are.
Yeah, sort of dipping back in. But yeah,
I think that's definitely a possibility.
I agree. I think it even sets up like another detective who is likely to be
Isaac Green,
who is likely to be very important as the story goes on. But he appears for about 6 panels in one issue.
Not after that, really.
Points out a footprint, and then, we don't see him again within this volume. But I guess it's that sort of seeding and that kind of long-term storytelling that people really used to like about comics.
True. I like the idea. Like I said, I like that this is kind of a slow burn, feeding you little bits of information that ultimately will come together. It's almost kind of Coen Brothers-esque in that sense, where you kind of get little bits of information that I feel like will end up coming together very quickly at some point. Mm-hmm. It could be volume 2, it could be volume 3, 4, who knows? It could be whenever. This feels like it could be as long as Rick Remender has got ideas for where the plot goes.
Yeah. I don't know, 3 volumes feels good to me.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of books at the moment that are kind of 3-ish volumes, so...
3 is just a good length for a story, isn't it? You got your first volume to set it up, second volume's the meat, third volume's your ending.
You keep referring to second volumes as the meat at the moment, and there's something about it that just don't feel right. I don't know what it is. Well,
it's like a sandwich, a meat sandwich. Everybody's favourite. Undescribed meat.
Vague meat. No, I agree. I think we've seen stuff at the moment. Homesick Pilots is coming to a close at the 3rd volume, and it feels like the right length. Other things I've been a big fan of, like Royal City, were 3 volumes, and I think did everything they needed to. So yeah, I can see that this is very different to Homesick Pilots and Royal City.
Yeah.
But only in kind of every way. But I could see this. Yeah, volume 1 gives us the premise. Volume 2, well, does it give us the premise? I don't even know.
Yeah,
gives us some premise. Volume 2 fleshes that out. Volume 3 brings it all home.
Yeah, I'm into it. Doesn't overstay its welcome.
On the other hand, Rick Remender does have some very long comics.
He does some very long series, most of which I've read.
But I don't know. Low is relatively short.
Mm-hmm. So Fear Agent's not too long. I say Black Science and Deadly Class are
long.
Pretty long.
Black Science finished, but Deadly Class is still ticking, I think.
It's either finished or is coming to a finish, I think. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
I'm not quite up to date. Black Science I've read.
But we'll see. I guess.
And
Scumbag's still going, right?
Yeah.
Not sure where that's up to. Volume 3? Are we on
He
now?
did a few standalones as well. Is it Last Days of American Crime?
Yeah.
So.
Just reeling off the bibliography of Rick Remender now.
7 to Eternity. Yeah, that's a good one too. Anyway, all you Remender fans out there.
Just roll them off all the books we can remember. But no, I'm interested to see where this can go and how long this can go for. Maybe 3 volumes is the right length. Maybe
it just feels good to me.
Yeah, I don't want it to outstay its welcome. I want it to stay a kind of slow burny but intriguing crime book. I don't want it to become a kind of unending crime story.
Yeah, I want it to have a sort of explosive conclusion and then
get out of there
and then be done.
I think that's like Ed Brubaker constantly has another crime book and another crime book, and I think whilst they're not always connected, sometimes I do struggle with when it's like very similar crime stories, just with a kind of different lick of paint for...
Yeah, he's very much got his sort of style in his area, doesn't he? But I mean, he's got a massive fan base, so he's clearly doing something.
Yeah, no, it's... Don't get me wrong, Brubaker's great. I just think I made that fatal mistake of reading a lot of his books back to back, and you kind of go, oh, this is okay. This is the same characters casting the same actors cast as different characters. But no, I feel like we don't get a lot of Remender crime stuff. Everything kind of has its own spin. We've had sci-fi and we've had, I guess, more action books. So I feel like I've never read anything from him that is kind of pure crime. I mean, don't get me wrong, this could get real sci-fi at some point, but I don't feel like it's going to.
No, I think it would be perhaps a disservice if it
a real left turn. Volume 2, sci-fi.
But yeah, I'm very much excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, definitely. I think, maybe we'll be back here for volume 2. Maybe we'll save it and we'll do a full
recap
thing at volume 3.
Yeah.
A thing. I'll be honest, I don't have a lot more to add. I think we've kind of reached that wall of there's only so much we can both talk about a book we both like.
Yeah, I've got very little to criticise. And I think, read it. Go on. Go and read it instead.
I definitely think this is worth checking out. And even if crime isn't normally your thing, or you're not a big Rick Remender fan, I think there's something interesting about this story.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like one of his normal.
No, this feels very different, and I think that's kind of a good thing. I think it can be good to kind of
branch out a little bit.
Branch out, break out your comfort zone, and give something that different readers might be into. Mm-hmm. Angela would be into this. Angela likes crime.
Yeah. Crime and Valiant.
Crime and Valiant, and Valiant and Crime. Also dinosaurs and robots.
That's right. A Dino Robo heist set in the Valiant universe.
I think we can all be boiled down to some core concepts. It's just Angela is very easy to recognise with her enthusiasms for...
Mostly pessimism, moroseness.
Anything bleak.
Yeah. And massive spaceships.
Yeah, that's kind of you in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I think I have... branded myself in the last year of being overly enthusiastic about humanoid turtles, but you know what? I stand by it.
I mean, yeah, the turtles will always be amongst my absolute favourite of all things.
I like other things. I also like punk bands and ghosts.
Yeah.
Wow, I've really narrowed that down.
I like pizza. I like the New York sewer system, and I like April O'Neil. Casey Jones, and that's it. They're all the things that I like.
Yeah, they're all up there.
Dislikes technodromes.
Love me a good technodrome.
Shredders. Etc.
Shredder.
Oh, Shredder. Oh, dread Shredder.
So on that strange conclusive note, this has been Bigger Than Capes. We have other episodes on all of the podcast places, so if you liked this, go get some more. We have written reviews at biggerthancapes.com, and we also have a coffee page if you want to support us as we do this.
Woo!
We have been Will and Zach and Will collectively, Bigger Than Capes, and remember that comics are bigger than capes.
Bueno.